Well, let's talk about this then. Let's shift to the receiver position. Stephen Light wants to talk about receivers. Regular show, donates to the channel here, and appreciate that. If you want to be like Stephen and you want to donate to the channel, you can always give a super chat. We'll talk about your question on air, and you get a shout out if you want it. Stephen says, thanks for all the great content. Not to derail the Baltimore story, but T. Frank's Jerry Hawkins article has me with googly eyes. So check that out, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Great time to mention, hey, subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. 6 months for $29.99, a better deal than you were getting before. So we just keep sweetening the pot. I don't know what you're waiting for if you haven't gone yet. That I did an advanced scouting, just looking at highlight film, giving my thoughts on Jerry Hawkins. Receivers at this camp. Penn State is in need of receivers in this class, 25, 26. They need all of them at all times. So what did you guys see from those guys that were assembled in Baltimore this weekend?
Ryan,
well, the
one thing I'll say,
I will. I promise. I'm going to actually ask one of you a specific question at some point today.
We're good,
Ryan.
So the one thing I'd like to say too with Jure is just like, remember 5'9", 160. He's small, and yeah. I think he's going to end up at Penn State. You know, depending on how things play out, I think there is a real chance he'll end up at Penn State. But they're just looking for bigger guys too. So that's you got to just keep that in mind there with him. You know, the receiver group. I thought Rico Scott looked pretty good. Of course, he's committed to Alabama. We'll see if Penn State's able to get him back on campus at some point. But if he wants to end up at Alabama, I don't. Excuse me, I don't know if visiting other schools is the smartest thing to do. So we'll see how that plays out. But I was impressed with Rico Scott. I thought he moved really well. He certainly was one of the best guys there. The other receivers there are all kind of, I don't want to say plan B guys for Penn State, but again, we know. If you look at Penn State's wide receiver board, who has official visits set, you know, none of these guys are really in that category. I mean, Chance Wiggins, I knew he was big. I didn't know he was that big, Sean. You know, Elijah Moore, another guy that I thought at one point Penn State was in the mix with, doesn't really feel like that's going to happen anymore. You know, one guy I kind of stood out to me is Thomas McCoy. He's a up and coming 2024 wide receiver. Penn State just offered a couple of weeks ago. Sean, you and I were watching him through that gauntlet drill. I thought he, you know, moved really well. Yeah, that's McCoy there. Certainly a player to keep an eye on. I get the impression Penn State would love for him to come camp, you know, get some more testing times on him. At the same time, we'll see how he tested yesterday, right? Those, like I said, those times won't come out for a few more days, but Penn State has access to all this information. So he's a guy I think to keep an eye on out of Mount Zebedee in Maryland. Recent offer. Again, I think they really want him to camp, and then we'll see if things progress there. But a couple others. I mean, Jeff Exner was there. I thought Jeff Exner was going to be a DN. I guess he's going to be a tight end or a wide receiver. I'm not exactly sure. But he's one of those McDonough guys where, you know, Penn State always has great ties to McDonough. I think there's a real chance that Jeff Exner ends up at Penn State at some point. One guy who really kind of stood out to me, Elias Cook from Harrisburg. I know Sean always says I'm being biased with the 7-on-717 guys, but Elias actually really impressed me. You know, as for a freshman too, thought he really caught the ball well. I mean, there was some situations there where, you know, he was going up and over top of defensive backs and just moved better than I thought he would too. Again, because of his age more than, you know, any knock on him or anything. It's just a lot of younger guys there kind of struggle when they're going up against the best DBs, the best juniors and seniors in the area. But keep an eye on him. You know, Brandon Raymond was there out of St. Joseph's Prep, looks solid again. But a lot of these guys just don't feel like they're at the top of Penn State's board right now. So I don't. You know, I'm sure one or two of them was going to test really well, and Penn State's going to find out about it, and that, you know, may help them maybe line up an official visit or something like that here in June. But, you know, passing the eye test from what Sean and I have seen, you know, there was nobody yesterday that was like, oh yeah, this is something Penn State has to
in the pack. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. I was thinking that too. It was a good group, but like there wasn't anybody that crushed it. I'll go back to Thomas McCoy. Like, in terms of expectation, we didn't really know much about him going in. I knew that Penn State offered a couple of weeks ago. His coach actually played with Marcus Hagens at Virginia, knows Dex really well. He was the smoothest that I saw, like gauntlet, running drills, catching the ball away from his body. Like there's something there. Like that kid can play. So I'm very curious to see where he fits in as an athlete. Not sure what straight line speed, shuttle, all that kind of stuff that he brings to the table. But like, it would not shock me for Thomas McCoy to move up that list a little bit. I don't know if he's going to go into the official visit realm. I bet with Ryan, I bet they would like to get him on campus to camp a little bit to work with them to see what he goes. Cause I mean, that's we sometimes set the board and set it and forget it. And then we realize it's just the middle of May or the beginning of actually middle of May, the 15th today. So there's still time for evaluation. There's still time for camps. There's still time for spring evaluation guys to pop up. And sometimes they do at camps like this. And McCoy, I think, is an example of a guy that could be somebody we're talking about in a month, somebody we're talking about in 2 months, and or something like that. Because I thought just from watching him versus what I've seen in the past, we kind of stacked up well with some of the guys that they brought in Penn State.
So is this
T-Frank, real quick? T-Frank,
Sure.
let me jump into one more thing real quick, just to kind of highlight what we're talking about. The MVP yesterday was a freshman, a 2026 kid, Davion Brown, from Trinity Episcopal in Richmond. You know, I'll be honest, I didn't watch him a whole lot because I didn't. And Penn State has offered him, but I'm not really. I'm watching 2025 guys more than 2026 guys, especially out of that group. You know, we have some film and stuff, and I'll go back and watch that obviously here in a couple of days. But you know, it's when a freshman is the one getting the MVP honor at these camps, that's not something you see very often. But he's certainly, I think, a player we need to keep an eye on, you know, just from the fact that all of his coaches gave him that MVP honor. So keep an eye on him, Davion Brown, Trinity Episcopal out of Richmond.
So is this a position, speaking of camps, is this a position where when Penn State hosts their regional camps over the summer, you know, bring in hundreds of players from all over the region, Fitz, is this a position you're still looking for guys in 2024? Because there's a lot of times, as Ryan just said, when you go to those camps, you're looking at 25. Okay, who are the names to know for the next batch? Because we kind of have a firm knowledge of all of the targets. Are you going to be still looking for and evaluating receivers in 24 for the summer period for Penn State?
Absolutely. And I will say Jonathan Paylor, who looks like he's going to go to South Carolina, was very good yesterday as well out of the slot. But I think it's absolutely an opportunity for somebody to earn an offer at camp. Probably going to take 4 receivers, Ryan? So in that ballpark.
If they can.
If they can. So that tells me there's space. They've got nobody right now. And there's an opportunity there. So I would be interested, especially in that first camp, the first camp of the summer, because you've got some guys that we're seeing scheduling official visits for the end of the month or scheduling for, you know, the second, third, and fourth week. And some of those guys may be still in school, but it's an opportunity to get them in maybe the beginning of the month to see if they're on that line, to see if they can make it work. And it's worked for some guys. It has not worked for others. But, you know, if you're on that line and you want to get to the other side of that line, that's the way to do it, is to get to camp. So I would not be shocked if they were, you know, heavy on the evaluations, if we'll say, in terms of receiver, because they don't have anybody and they've got the opportunity to take numbers in this class. So I think that really makes sense for guys like a guy like Thomas McCoy to come up. If you have an offer, you know, you've got an offer, but you don't have an official visit set, you're kind of in that gray area between, are they serious about me or not? This is an opportunity for him to make them be serious about you, or just go the other direction. And we've seen that a bunch. We've seen guys that come to camp and like, oh, you're not as athletic as we thought we would, or you were. Excuse me, you're not as athletic as you thought you were. That's okay. Like, just go in a different direction. You've got the rest of June to take official visits elsewhere. So I think that's kind of where we sit with evaluating the wide receiver position. There's some other guys. Chance Wiggins is really interesting because he is huge, absolutely huge. I don't know that he's tight end huge. He moves fairly well, but does he run well enough to be at Penn State? That's a good question. Very productive guy, great kid, a lot to like there as a total package, but might be another one of those kids that you try and get up at the beginning of June to run for you to see what you've got. Because I think if he had the opportunity to be at Penn State, that might be a kid that jumps on that opportunity. So we'll see what happens at that position. But absolutely, I think this summer they'll get a chance to look at some more guys.